My name is Nora Quinn, and tonight I walked into my mother's house and found a birthday party for my father's mistress underway. Balloons bumped the ceiling, a store cake sweated under bright kitchen lights, and the laughter stopped the second my boots hit the rug. I wore my uniform. Not for theater. I had just come off shift. Dust marked the cuffs. A faint bite of oil rode with me. My father stood by the mantel where my mother keeps school photos and a folded flag from her brother. He held a plastic knife like a baton. He glanced at the stove clock, then at me. "You couldn't change." First, he said same tone as when I was 10 and tracked mud. Taylor, the guest of honor, wore a paper crown and a red sweater that matched a banner taped over the fireplace, "Happy Home." She froze with a lighter halfway to the candles. Her smile held like wet paint. Neighbors filled the room. Mrs. Duffy from church clutched a plate of potato salad. Earl and Bonnie Pierce stood near the slider with red cups they didn't raise. The TV was muted. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cold coffee. I knew every board in that floor. I didn't raise my voice. I gave a thin smile and let the quiet do the work. You can hear a fork hit a paper plate from 30 feet when no one wants to meet your eyes. My dad threw a birthday party for his mistress in my mom's house. I said, plain as weather. I walked in still in uniform. The room went quiet. I looked at my father so he didn't have to look away. "Birthday?" I asked. "Looks more like the funeral of this family's honor." The words didn't slam. They sat. A helium balloon rubbed the ceiling and whispered. My father set the knife down. "Nora," he said, warning shaped like care. "Not here." He nodded toward the kitchen as if the problem was location. "I am here," I said. Taylor lifted both hands. "We don't want trouble," she said to the room, asking for a nod that didn't come. Mrs. Duffy exhaled and lowered the potato salad. "I'm not here for trouble," I said. "I'm here for order." I scanned without turning my head. The banner. The cut glass candy dish my mother fills at Christmas, now stuffed with confetti. Mantle photos that start with grade school and end with a wedding. The nail where my mother's framed classroom poem should hang was empty. That more than the banner made my throat tighten. "This is my house," my father said, like a line practiced in a mirror. I let it sit. On the coffee table, napkins with blue stripes. I laid my hand on them to keep it still. "Is it?" I asked. He looked for a chorus and found quiet. I moved 2 steps in. Boots even. Not slow, not fast. The sound they made on the floor marked the room. Someone killed the TV. The house made its own sounds, the fridge clicking on the furnace, taking a breath at the clock over the sink, chewing seconds. "It's just cake Taylor tried?" "It's a house," I said. "It's a promise." I nodded toward the photographs. "It remembers how you turn." My father's jaw tightened. He looked once at the folded flag, then away. "You always had a flair for entrances," he said. "I prefer clean exits," I said. Earl set his cup down, noticed the ring, wiped it with his sleeve, and held the cup like a man at a wake. My heartbeat settled into function. Not anger, not pride. Work. "Dad," I said, "where's Mom's framed poem?" "In a box," he said. "We're freshening up." I asked. He didn't answer. Taylor's mouth made a small O and closed. The room took sides without moving. "I won't be long," I said. "I have work in the morning, but some things can't wait." He looked at my sleeves at the dust. "You came straight from base to make a point." "I came straight because this is the time you gave me," I said. "You sent an invitation." Bonnie let out a small laugh and covered her mouth. Not at me, at how it looked from 1 step away. "Can we just do the candles?" Taylor said. And then, "No," I said, gentle. "Not here. Not under that banner. Not over my mother's rug." My father put his hands on his hips. "You think that uniform gives you the right to tell me how to live in my house? Being your daughter gives me the obligation to say it out loud when you're wrong," I said. "The uniform keeps my hands from shaking." The line drew a breath from the room. I hadn't planned it. It had been building for years. I looked at the doorway, a scuff where a bike pedal hit in '98, a chip where a Christmas tree scraped. My mother touches that chip every December. She wasn't here to touch it, so I did. Let's go outside, my father said again, more plea than order. I'm fine here, I said. We all are. He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked smaller than the room. A phone buzzed on the counter. Conversation tried to start and failed. I slid my hand into my inside pocket. Paper makes a sound you can't mistake when it's official. I didn't pull anything out. Not yet. Mrs. Duffy, I said, would you take down that banner? She hesitated, then moved practical. Tape peeled in slow stutters. Home sagged and came away. She folded the plastic and held it like it might sting. I nodded. She set it on a chair. Headlights swept across the front windows. Tires whispered along the curb. The clock over the sink clicked once and seemed to wait. A firm knock came at the door. 2 beats a breath, one more. I didn't turn right away. I looked at my father. We have the same eyes. It didn't help. Evening. A voice called through the doorplane and local. County Sheriff's Office. The room held its breath. I took mine. And then I reached into my pocket. I didn't open the door. Not yet. The knock sat there steady and polite, and the room balanced on it. I kept my hand in my pocket on the plastic sleeve and let my eyes do what they do. When something hard shows up, they went back. This house taught me that. You learn a place before you move inside it. Which boards complain? Which doors swell in summer? My father taught me to notice. He didn't say I love you much. He said shoes by the mat. Forks on the left. Don't slam the fridge. We ate at 6. Pot roast on towels, peas with too much butter, the evening news murmuring from the other room. Dad liked routines that didn't ask for feelings. Mom supplied the ones that did iced tea in a sweating glass, a hand on my shoulder when the sky turned a book left open with a paper scrap marking a line. Sundays had their own order. Church at 10, yard work after. Dad mowed in lines you could set a watch by. I raked. Mom dead-headed roses. If a shoe pointed wrong by the door, he nudged it until both toes matched. If my voice ran hot, he looked at the clock and waited for it to cool. Silence did the work. I loved him the way kids do by trying to match his picture. I ironed pillowcases, lined up school books, scraped my plate clean. When I joined the Marine option in ROTC, he didn't yell. He folded the brochure until it would not fold again and set it in the trash. Mom called it his weather. He thinks storms pass if he doesn't name them, she said. He wasn't a monster. He fixed neighbors' mowers. He drove Mrs. Duffy's husband to appointments. He showed up with jumper cables. He believed tidy kept chaos out. He forgot people aren't cabinets. Mom and I learned to talk in the car windows down on county roads. She told me once she wanted to travel the country in a school bus-turned-library. She laughed and said she traded it for 9th graders and a man who needs his forks straight. Taylor didn't have a name at first. She ran the church raffle, or she knew a plumber when our water heater coughed. She was there when something needed doing and stayed in the frame after. Mom noticed like you notice humming you can't place. She didn't accuse. She bought better lipstick and took long walks at dusk. The year Mom had her gallbladder out, Taylor brought casseroles and stood too long in our kitchen. Dad said she was neighborly. Mom said she was present. The difference felt small until it wasn't. By spring, Mom moved to her sister's to rest. Dad changed the locks because of break-ins. People noticed. They brought pies and careful eyes and didn't ask questions. The house changed. Without Mom, the mantel filled with seasonal signs and a photo of Dad at the VFW fish fry. The framed poem, Mom kept the one about choosing a road, disappeared. He said he boxed it. I checked the garage on leave. Dust made soft stars on every tote. No poem. I called less when I was stationed far. That didn't mean I stopped loving him. It meant I understood how he loved by upkeep, by doing, by making sure the gutters were clear before leaf turned to ice. When I said I'd taken a logistics billet stateside, he said, "Good, you can help with the water heater." Where he came from, that was a joke. Then his calls came with Taylor's laugh in the background and the way he said, "We about paint colors." I visited when I could and learned the new rules. Don't move the chair by the window. Don't put the good plates in the dishwasher. Don't say Mom's name like a question. Mom texted from her sisters. She said she was reading again. She sent a photo of a stray cat that adopted her. Maple. She ended every message with, "No worries, I'm fine." The party invite found me through the grapevine. Mrs. Duffy saw the banner bag. Bonnie Pierce heard a little get-together. Someone posted a selfie with a paper crown on a kitchen counter I knew. I kept my face flat. Inside, something stubborn stood up. I stopped by Mom's with groceries. We sat at her sister's wobbly table and ate eggs that stuck to the pan. She wouldn't badmouth him. He's making choices, she said, and I'm making mine. She touched the pale band where her ring had lived and tucked her hand away. I don't want to fight, she said. I want my house quiet again. Softer, I want my things where I put them. On base, I keep lists. You trust a list because it keeps you honest about what is next. I went home and made one. Calls, names, lines that ring to desks. I wrote dates. I made copies. I practiced the order of what to hand over and when. I won't drag you through every hour. I'll just say this: nothing that happened tonight was an accident. Not the timing, not the knock, not the way I stood. It was a set table. This house taught me how to set one. So did the core. The knock came again, same cadence. "Patient! County Sheriff!" a voice called. My father looked toward the sound like a man checking weather. The room studied me. I took my hand off the napkins and closed my fingers around the plastic sleeve. I had made sure the right name would be on the other side of that wood. My mother's house deserved quiet. It also deserved a spine. I turned toward the door. 3 weeks ago, I parked in a spot marked Visitors at the county building and let the engine idle while I read my list. Recorder, clerk of court, elder law, copies, names. Don't improvise. Inside the recorder's office smelled like toner and hand soap. A sign said, deeds, liens, plats. I gave my mother's name. The clerk Mona searched, clicked, and angled the screen. There, she said. Warranty deed recorded 2003. Owner Linda Quinn. She tapped another line. No transfer since. No mortgage of record. She looked at me over the monitor. You want a certified copy? Yes, ma'am. Cost is $6, Mona said. You want the plat map too? Yes. I made the copies, slid them into a folder with tabs I'd labeled at my kitchen table. I added a sticky with the book and page number. Next stop was a storefront office with a green awning and a calendar from a seed company. Janice Crowley, attorney at law, elder and family. She waved me in with a pen between her fingers. I'm not here to make a mess, I said. I'm here to put my mother back in her house without breaking anything that matters. Good, she said. Judges like people who aren't trying to win by volume. She took off her reading glasses. Here's how it works plain. Your mother owns the place. She can ask for exclusive possession while things get sorted. We file a petition, attach the deed, and ask for a temporary order. We serve it. You do not change locks until the order is served with a deputy present. Understood? Yes. You have a power of attorney. Not yet, I said. She'll sign whatever you need. Limited will do. She slid a form across the desk. Narrow scope residence utilities keys. You're not evicting anyone. You're enforcing possession for the titled owner and keeping the peace. She explained service and hearing dates, how the court might set a short window for personal items, how deputies stand by but don't move furniture. No TV drama, just procedure with a heartbeat. We filed at the clerk's window. The clerk stamped it red and told us to sit. After 40 minutes, a bailiff called my mother's name. The judge, gray suit coffee ring on his docket, read, asked 2 questions, and signed. Temporary order granting exclusive possession to Linda Quinn, effective upon service. At the VFW that night, Earl Pierce looked over his mug. You sure you want to stir this? I want the house quiet, I said. And Mom's things where she left them? Then bring paper, he said, and someone with a badge. 2 days before tonight, I met Deputy Hank Morales in a hallway that smelled like floor wax and rain. He was careful with his words. We're neutral, he said, reading the order. We don't take sides. We keep hands down and voices low. You serve. They listen. If they don't, I read the part that matters. Then I set a short window to gather personal items. No threats, no speeches. You okay with that? That's why I asked for you, I said. He checked his calendar. Saturday, I can be nearby between 7 and 8. If you want, I give a courtesy knock right after you serve. A uniform cools the air. Please, I said. Don't block the door, he added. Don't touch what you aren't ready to carry. Mom signed the limited power of attorney at Janice's desk the next morning. Her hand shook once when she wrote the Q in Quinn. She squeezed mine. No yelling, she said. No yelling, I agreed. On Thursday, I drove by the house at dusk and wrote down plates on the curb. That's a habit I picked up overseas. Know who's present before you step in. The Pierces, the Duffys, a Ford I didn't know with a cracked taillight. The living room shades were open. I saw a bare nail where the poem should be and a string of lemon-shaped lights over the sink. Mom hates novelty lights. The sight helped more than anger would have. Friday. Mrs. Duffy called from the church lot. There's a party Saturday, 7. I know, I said. Do you need anything? Prayers and patience, I said. I've got both, she said, and a roll of black trash bags. Saturday came like any other day until it didn't. I ran 2 miles at dawn and took a long shower. I laid out my uniform because it was what I had on. I slid the order into a weatherproof sleeve. I put 3 copies behind it. I taped a sticky inside the folder. Do not argue. Do not explain. Serve. Step aside. At 5:30, I called Morales. Still good. Still good, he said. Text when you're parked. I'll stage 2 blocks over. If it looks calm, I wait for your nod. If it goes sideways, I come in. Copy, I said. At 6, I stopped by Mom's. She was stirring chili she'd never eat tonight. We talked about Maple the cat and how the first cool nights make the world smell like leaves. She gave me the spare key she'd carried on a string since 1998, just in case, she said. I got to the block at 6:50. I parked where I could see the porch and not be seen from it. I texted Morales. He sent back a thumbs up and the word nearby. I watched people walk up the drive carrying a sheet cake grocery store flowers, a gift bag with a leopard print bow. At 6:58, I walked. My boots knew that sidewalk. The porch light was a brighter bulb now. It made the paint look tired. Inside, someone laughed big. I stood straight, set my jaw, and opened the door. That brings me to the knock you heard at the end of the last part. The deputies waited like we agreed. Cool air first. Paper second. Noise last, if at all. I took the plastic sleeve out of my pocket and turned toward the entry. Evening, Morales said through the wood. My father's eyes cut to mine. He wanted to turn this into a conversation. I wanted to keep it a procedure. I put my hand on the latch. I kept my hand on the latch and let the house breathe around me. The knock held steady on the other side. If I opened, the night would tip forward. Before it did, I let the last weeks pass through me like mile markers, the pieces that made tonight necessary, not dramatic. After Mom moved to Aunt Marion's duplex, I brought milk and oranges. The place smelled like fried onions and pine sol. A bird calendar hung crooked. Mom poured tea into chipped mugs and said, I don't want to fight. I want quiet. Quiet doesn't happen by accident, I said. It has to be put back on its hooks. She smiled at that. We ate eggs too dry and talked about Maple, the cat sleeping in a sunstripe. She asked about work. I kept it plain. The next afternoon, Mrs. Duffy waved me down in the church lot. Not to gossip, she said, but there's a banner in your living room, Happy Home. And Taylor's asking if anyone wants old teacher books. Whose? Your mother's, the poetry ones. I thanked her. She asked if I needed help. Maybe Saturday, I said. Mostly I need people to stay calm. I can do calm, she said. I'll bring trash bags. That night, I printed the judge's order again and wrote the page number in black marker across the top. I slid the deed copy behind it. A small wall of paper and numbers began to feel like a room. On Thursday, Mr. Pierce knocked on my door with his hands in his pockets. Saw a box go to the curb, he said. Look like frames. I drove by after work. The curb held a broken rocking horse, old magazines, and a frame with cracked glass. The mat inside was sun-bleached around a missing rectangle. I didn't need the rectangle to know. Mom's poem was gone. The bare nail above the mantel had said so. The empty mat said it louder. I set the frame on Aunt Marion's table and went through the recycle bin like the past might be sorted by color. Mom didn't ask why. She held the bag open. We didn't find it. She wiped grit from her hands. "It's only paper," she said. Then softer. "It's not only paper." That was when the house stopped being a minefield and became a mission. You don't have to love war to know when a line has to hold. "I called Ray's Lock and Key," Bev answered. "We don't touch anything without the titled owner present or a court order," she said. "I'll have both. Saturday." She put me on hold, came back with a window, 8:20 to 8:40. "Show me the order first." "Copy." Friday. I met Deputy Morales in a courthouse hallway that echoed. He read the order slow. "We keep it boring," he said. "You serve." I cool the air. If someone starts a scene, I read the line that matters and we move to the porch. Windows stay intact. Voices stay inside bodies. "I can do boring," I said. He half smiled. Quiet wins more than noise. I told him about the poem. He didn't write anything down. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. Saturday morning, Mom and I walked the farmer's market like we used to. She touched tomatoes she didn't buy. At a quilt table, her hand paused on a pattern of roads that crossed and crossed again. She didn't say the word choice. She didn't have to. In the afternoon, I ironed my uniform because that's what was in the hamper, and because getting it right calms my hands. I packed my folder and a roll of blue tape. Blue tape keeps people from grabbing too fast. You mark what stays, what goes later, and you fight 100 tiny fights with labels instead of voices. At 5, Dad called. "Don't make a scene," he said. "I'm making a plan." "You always were dramatic." "I'm not the one with a banner." He tried again. "Come after if you have to. Not in front of people." "You did," I said, and ended it before we could ruin what was left. We set the clock. Morales could stage between 7 and 8, 2 blocks over. "Text when you're parked," he said. "If it's calm, wait for my nod. If it bends, I knock. Courtesy knock 3 minutes after service order, first badge, second." Bev asked for my ID and the limited power of attorney in the top sleeve. I packed both behind the order with a sticky "show first." Neighbors found their part. Earl said he and Bonnie would come later with coffee and bags. "We won't linger," he said. "We'll just steady what falls." At Aunt Marion's, Mom signed the limited power of attorney. "No yelling," she said. "No names." "No yelling," I said. "No names." I labeled blue tape. "Linda stays temporary. Later. Tape and ink do work, mouths can't do. Temperature drops when decisions sit on a wall instead of in the throat." At 6:30, I drove the long way past the pond where I learned without training wheels. The memory steadied the wheel. I parked down the block and watched. When I walked up the porch, light hit my jacket. I remembered my mother's hands learning to press those creases, breath fogging the brass. She'd wanted to get it right for me. I wanted to get it right for her. Which brings me back to this latch under my palm, the knock, the badge waiting in the dark. I had lined up men and paper and time on purpose. Revenge didn't interest me. Repair did. I opened the door. Deputy Morales stood with his hat in his hands and another deputy beside him. Ordinary, in the way you want help to be: shirts, pressed radios, quiet faces, neutral. "Evening," Ma'am Morales said. "You ready?" "Yes." He nodded past me toward the light. "Then let's keep it tidy." I stepped back to let Morales cross the threshold first. He didn't rush it. He stood just inside the door, hat in his hands, and nodded to the room like he'd walked into a fish fry instead of a mistake. "Evening," he said, neutral as weather. "Deputy Morales, we're here on a civil standby. Nobody's in trouble. Let's keep it calm." People breathed again because someone told them how. The second deputy, young square shoulders, stayed at the jam, eyes, soft hands visible. Radios quiet. No hands on anything. I took one breath too. I had rehearsed my sentence like you rehearse. Tying a tourniquet, smooth, sure, no apologies. The order's edge pressed through plastic against my thumb. I could feel the embossed seal through the sleeve. Dad tried to reframe the room. "We're in the middle of something," he said. "You can't just—" "You can finish outside," I said. "This part belongs to the court." Taylor's eyes went glassy with indignation. "You brought police to a birthday party." "I brought calm," I said. Mrs. Duffy edged toward the mantel with the folded banner. She didn't look at me. She just straightened the pictures Mom had left and touched the empty nail like she was checking a pulse. Earl and Bonnie shifted toward the kitchen island and started gathering cups. Their faces read the room and then looked at the floor. You can tell who has lived through storms by who moves toward the towels. I didn't sermonize. I put the folder on the coffee table and opened it so the caption sat at the top like a quiet fact. I put a spare copy beside it. I kept my voice low. This is a temporary order granting exclusive possession of the residence to Linda Quinn, I said. Effective upon service. Dad's jaw worked. She left, he said. She doesn't want to fight. She wants her house quiet, I said. Tonight is how we start. He looked at Morales. Do you people just show up when she snaps her fingers? Morales didn't bite. We're here because there's an order, he said plain. Our job is to keep it peaceful. Peaceful, Dad said, like he was tasting a word he remembered from years ago. I felt the tremor in my own hands look for a place to go and found the paper. Paper took it. That was the point. Boredom is a tool. Taylor reached for the crystal candy dish, the one Mom fills with red and green mints at Christmas. Confetti rattled inside. I put 2 fingers on the lid. That stays, I said, polite. It's candy, Taylor said. It's a promise, I said. We'll sort later. She let go. Confetti settled. The young deputy asked, mind if I open this window a crack? Gets stuffy when folks stop breathing. Please, I said. He lifted the sash 2 inches. Cool air edged in and lifted the smell of lemon cleaner and frosting. The balloons bumped their knots against the ceiling and sounded like small shoes on linoleum. Dad's shoulders squared in that way men use when they don't know which way to face. He gestured with his chin at my uniform. You really had to wear that in here. It's what I had on, I said. Then, because it mattered to say it once out loud, and it keeps my hands from shaking. He heard that. He didn't say he did. Here's how this goes. Morales said the cadence of a man who said it 100 times. She serves you the order. I read the one line that matters. Then you get a short window to gather personal items, clothes, medicines, work tools. Documents stay. Furniture stays. Anything disputed stays. You'll have a chance to sort it with the court. Tonight we keep the air clear. 30 minutes, the young deputy added, not unkindly. 30 minutes, Taylor said, brittleness. Showing for a whole life. Nobody's whole life is going in a bag, Morales said. Just what you need tonight. I picked up the weatherproof sleeve and broke the strip of tape at the top. Paper slid like it always does. I held the order so Dad could read the caption without me pushing it at him. He stared at the seal like it might blink. The clock over the sink ticked. Out front, a car door thumped and soft voices carried a laugh down the street. Boring life went on outside. Inside, we were doing something better than interesting. I didn't step closer. I let him come half a step to me. He didn't. So I bridged it careful. Charles Quinn. I said steady. I am serving you with a temporary order, granting exclusive possession of this residence to Linda Quinn. My voice didn't try to be big. It tried to be clear. Effective upon service. I didn't hand it yet. I looked at him once, only once the way you look at a man you love and know you can't fix. Before I passed the paper, I did one more thing I'd planned and hoped I wouldn't forget. I turned to the room. Folks, I said nothing to see here that needs voices. If you're holding a plate, finish it and head out. If you're holding something that belongs to my mother, put it down. That gave the decent people something to do. Mrs. Duffy folded 2 paper crowns into a neat square like she was quilting. Earl and Bonnie started stacking cups and set them by the sink. Even the balloons seemed to understand their place and went still at the ceiling. Dad looked like a man deciding whether to make his next 10 years worse in a single sentence. He closed his mouth. He didn't apologize. He didn't explode. He watched me the way you watch a stranger assemble your bookshelf and realize it's sturdier than the one you built. Morales tipped his head to me. Ready when you are. Outside, a dog barked twice and gave up. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler ratcheted over a lawn and stopped with a click. I put the copy on the table for Taylor to glare at later. I held the original between us like a bridge no one asked for but everyone needed. My thumb covered the word temporary, so nobody had to read it as mercy. Mercy was beside the point. Quiet is not a gift. It's a discipline. I could feel my mother in the room then. Not like a ghost, like a habit, how she sets the spoon on a saucer, how she says a person's name before she says the hard thing. I said his name again, softer. Charles Lefroy, I said, "This is service." I lifted the paper 2 inches ready to place it in his hand and saw the tiniest tremor at his wrist, the same one mine gets when the coffee's too strong. He was older than the last time I let myself notice. He had cut himself shaving. A dot of tissue clung at the jaw. Taylor made a small sound that might have been a plea or a curse. It didn't matter. The room had decided without voting. I took a breath that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with finishing what you start. Then I offered the order. He didn't take the paper at first. He looked at it like it might bite. Then he did what decent people do when the next step is clear. He pinched the edge between 2 fingers and took responsibility he didn't want. The order sat in his palm. He didn't read it. Morales did. In the matter of possession, the deputy said, voice steady and dull on purpose, "This order grants exclusive possession of this residence to Linda Quinn, effective upon service." He tapped the seal. "This is service." Taylor half laughed. "You can't just throw us out with a cake knife in the air." "Nobody's throwing," Morales said. "You'll have 30 minutes to gather personal items, clothes, medicines, work tools. Documents stay. Photos stay. Furniture stays." The second deputy checked his watch like a Little League ump. "Window starts now." A murmur moved through the room. Earl and Bonnie stacked cups. Mrs. Duffy folded the banner small. I took out my roll of blue tape and a marker. I wrote "Linda stays" and pressed it to the candy dish my mother fills at Christmas. I wrote it again on the school photos. I put a small square on the folded flag case. Taylor hovered at the mantel. "This one's just a copy," she said, meaning my parents' wedding photo. "It stays," I said. "It's a picture," she said. "It's the one with that crease," I said. Her hand pulled back. Morales gave my father a path. "Mr. Quinn," he said, "grab a bag, medicines, a change of clothes, work boots. We're not here to humiliate anyone. We're here to keep tonight small." Dad nodded, set the order on the mantel under the empty nail, and went down the hall. The young deputy kept his hands visible. "If anybody needs a laundry basket," he said, "there's one by the washer." Bonnie brought it, white plastic handle clicking like it had carried more than it should and would again tonight. Taylor started fast makeup, bag, shoes, a sweater tossed onto the pile. She reached for a stack of mail. "Mail stays," I said. "It's mine," she said, then saw the return address and put it back. Down the hall, drawers opened and closed, the hollow sounds of a life reduced to what you can carry in 30 minutes. My father's shaver rattled on porcelain. A bottle cap rolled, hit the baseboard, and stopped. He returned with a toiletry bag and his work boots. The laces were tied together the way he taught me when I was small. He looked at Morales. "Do I have to hand over my key?" he asked, like a man testing winter ice. "Not required tonight," Morales said. "But wise. Locks can change after service when the owner's present." I set the power of attorney on the deed copy where he could see it. "Bev from Ray's Lock and Key is scheduled for 8:20, I said. "I'll show her both." He nodded. Mrs. Duffy started a black trash bag, like she'd promised. She filled it with plates and the banner. Earl ran water to rinse frosting so aunts wouldn't read our mistakes in sugar. Taylor came back from the bedroom with a jewelry tin that wasn't hers. 3 faces told her to put it back. She did. The lid clicked like a period. 15 minutes, the young deputy said, not to rush, just to keep the clock honest. My father carried a cardboard box. On top, a cheap frame, him and Taylor at the shore. He waited for the rule. "Personal photo," I said. "You can take it." At the closet shelf, a shoebox banded with rubber. He reached for it. "What is it?" I asked. "Receipts," he said. "Insurance. Titles." "Documents stay," I said. He set it back and closed the door. 10 minutes, Morales said from the living room. Taylor's voice went small. "Where are we supposed to go?" "There's a motel by the highway," Earl said. "They take cards." She looked like she wanted to throw that kindness back, and then remembered she might need kindness again. I wrote later and put it on the cookbooks, Mom's penciled notes beside Taylor's glossy ones. The line between them wasn't a fight. It was a shelf. Dad returned in his coat. A tissue dot clung at his jaw. He had the box, the toiletry kit, a flannel over his arm. He tapped the order with his knuckle. "Temporary," he said. "We'll see the judge." "You will," I said, "and Mom will." He swallowed. 5 minutes, the young deputy said. Mrs. Duffy pressed 2 Tupperware containers at Taylor. "You'll need something to eat," she said. "Return the containers when you can." "Thank you," Taylor said. The oven clock read 7:42. Bev would come at 8:20 if we stayed on rails. Morales met my father's eye. "Time," he said. Dad picked up his box and his dignity. He thumbed the key ring and held up the blue fob the front door. He stared 1 beat too long and set it on the mantel under the empty nail. Not required. Done anyway. Sometimes a man knows when a door is no longer his. We walked them to the porch. Crickets worked the edges. At the top step, Taylor turned. "This is cruel," she said. "This is careful," I said. Morales held the door like he would for anyone with hands full. The second deputy followed them to the walk and stopped. No parade, no pity, just shoes on concrete. Inside the room didn't cheer. It exhaled. Mrs. Duffy tied off the bag. Earl wiped the counter. I closed the door and set my palm against it to feel the solid of it. The clock over the sink chewed into the next minute. Papers lay where I'd left them. The house sounded like itself again. "Locksmiths in 38 minutes," I said. "We'll keep it tidy till then." Bev arrived at 8:21 with a teenager in a raised lock and key cap and a toolbox that thunked like a promise. She stood on the porch mat and didn't look past my shoulder. "Owner present or court order?" she asked. "Court order," I said and held up the sleeve. "Limited power of attorney for the owner too." She read, both lips moving on the caption, then nodded once. "Good paper," she said. "We'll rekey the knob and swap the deadbolt. Peepholes extra. You want it?" "Yes." Deputy Morales tipped his hat. "We'll stay till they're done." Inside the house kept its own heartbeat. The second deputy cracked the back door to let in night air. Mrs. Duffy washed the knife. Earl stacked chairs along the wall and said, "We'll put them where she likes them when she gets here tomorrow." Bev's apprentice set down pads to keep the brass from scarring the wood. Bev unscrewed the old deadbolt and held it in her palm like something that had outlived its job. "You want this?" she asked. "No." She dropped it into a paper bag, the way a nurse disposes of a bandage. The drill buzzed. The plate clicked. The peephole popped through with a neat silver blink. The new keys clinked like change in her hand. "2 sets," she said. "You want a third on the house?" "1 for me, 1 for Mom," I said. "Third for a neighbor, if she asks later." I looked at Mrs. Duffy. She shook her head. "Not me," she said. "Let her choose." Morales signed his name on nothing. He just watched the work get small and correct. When Bev finished, she tested the lock twice slow. "Do not oil this," she said. "It's self-lubricating. Oil gums it. Folks think oil fixes everything. It doesn't." "Copy," I said. She handed over the paper bag with the old cylinder. "Sometimes people keep these," she said. "I don't know why." "I don't either," I said and put it under the sink until I could throw it out where it wouldn't glitter on top. By 8:40, the deputies stood on the porch. Morales looked at me like a teacher looks at a kid who did the hard part the hard way. "We're good," he said. "If anybody circles back tonight, call dispatch. They'll send a car by." "Thank you," I said. He tipped his hat, shook Earl's hand like they'd hauled something together, and went down the steps. The young deputy followed quiet as he came. The house sighed. Not a trick of the furnace, the kind of exhale a chest makes when it's safe to sleep. We cleaned slow. Bonnie wiped the table with long strokes that erased frosting and left the wood grain honest again. Mrs. Duffy took the banner to her trunk and said she'd cut the cord and use it to tie tomato plants. Earl filled the trash bag, then started a second. He found a paper crown under the couch and flattened it with his palm. I wrote later on a strip of blue tape and put it on the leopard print gift bag. I left it on a chair where tomorrow's light would fall. I set Mom's ring dish back on the mantel where the poem had hung. The empty nail caught the light. I didn't pull it. Some absences are part of the record. At 9:10, I texted Mom. Locks changed. House quiet. Come at 10 tomorrow, I'll make coffee. She wrote back, thank you. No yelling, I sent. No yelling, just keys. Neighbors slipped out in twos. Earl tapped the counter once with his knuckles and said, you picked the right kind of fight. Mrs. Duffy hugged me the way churchwomen do, brief and all in. Tell your mother I'll bring cinnamon rolls if the Lord lets me wake up. When the door closed behind them, the house sounded like my childhood again. Fridge motor clock, tick a branch brushing the siding. I picked up the empty frames and stacked them by the hallway. I turned off the lemon lights over the sink because they weren't ours. I stood in the living room and let the new locks click echo once. Around 9:30, my phone buzzed. A number I knew. No name saved. Can we talk, my father wrote. I typed, not tonight. I deleted the period. I added it back. Not tonight. After a beat, I added, I'll be at the house tomorrow morning with Mom. If you need anything from the garage, text Earl and he'll help you get it. In daylight. Dots came. Stopped. Came again. Okay, he wrote. Then, do you still have my spare fob? On the mantel, I wrote, where you left it. I didn't add what I was thinking, that he had left more than a fob on that mantel. He had left the version of himself who thought quiet would arrive if he insisted on it. Tonight, quiet had come because other people did the work. I slept at Aunt Marian's because Mom asked me to. Maple. The cat took my lap like we'd signed something. In the morning, we drove over together with a bag of groceries and a jar of cinnamon sticks. I unlocked the front door and stepped back so Mom could cross first. She did what she's always done, paused on the mat to take in the room. She touched the ring dish. She straightened a photo by a 1/4 inch. She looked at the empty nail and put her palm flat under it, like she was catching a word as it fell. Where's my poem, she asked. Gone, I said. She nodded once, like a judge with a hard docket. Then we'll print another, she said. Maybe a different one. Mrs. Duffy showed up with a foil pan that steamed like a sermon. Earl and Bonnie brought coffee in a thermos, big enough to baptize a lawnmower. We ate on paper plates because clean plates take time, and this morning wasn't for dishes. Mom laughed twice. The sound fit the room. Around noon, I drove her to the hardware store for Murphy oil soap and a soft scrub brush that won't scratch old wood. We walked the same aisle we walked when I was 9 and held a paint chip up to the window. Her hand found my sleeve at the register and stayed there a second longer than it had to. I put the bag in the back seat and thought how many kinds of return a person can make. On the way home, my phone buzzed. We're at the Pine View, my father wrote. Room 214. We won't come by. I wrote back, thank you. After a breath, I added, when we're ready, we'll meet at the diner. In daylight, no names, just coffee. He answered with a single letter, K. That afternoon, we washed baseboards and talked about nothing. Maple chased a sunstripe from room to room, skidding on the corners like the floor remembered joy. I taped small blue labels. Linda stays on the things Mom reached for twice, without thinking: the tea kettle, the book basket, the jar for clothespins. That makes no sense until you hang a sheet on the line and see how a jar keeps pins from walking off. At 4, Mom set cinnamon sticks to simmer with orange peels. The house took that smell like a coat it had been missing. She moved through the rooms without apologizing to the walls. When she got to the porch, she stopped and stood very still. Listen, she said. I did. Leaves scraped the sidewalk. Somewhere down the block, a mower droned. In our kitchen, the kettle ticked as metal remembered heat. No voices tried to stretch themselves across the rooms. Quiet wasn't emptiness. It was a set of choices held in place. At sunset, I made a second key float for her and set it in her palm. For your ring, I said. She slid it on and looked at her hand the way you look at a map that finally lines up with where you're standing. You used to iron your father's shirts, she said. Now you ironed out a mess. Paper helped, I said. People helped, she corrected. And you kept your voice. We ate chili at her small table because we wanted to and because we could. When I left the porch, light glowed warm. I locked the new lock and put my ear to the door like I did when I was little to hear the house hum. It hummed. On the way home, I stopped at the VFW to return a borrowed dolly. Earl sat with the same coffee, same corner, same stories and room for one more. He lifted his mug. "Too boring," he said. "Too boring," I said back. "I don't have a tidy bow for you. I have a house that smells like cinnamon and soap, a mother who slept straight through a key that fits, and a father who wrote K when a question would have made things worse. I have neighbors who know how to move toward towels, a deputy who kept it dull, a locksmith who told me not to oil what works, and a paper with a seal that did what seals are supposed to do, hold. Some birthdays aren't celebrations. They're endings that needed to happen. Some returns aren't loud. They're just right." If this story met you somewhere true, take a minute tonight. Think about the person who kept your air clear when noise wanted it otherwise. Tell me about the time you chose repair over spectacle. Share it so somebody braver tomorrow can choose boring and win. And if you want more quiet, strong stories like this, subscribe and stick around. We'll keep the lights warm and the voices low.